All right, here we go on another episode of The Aggregate. We're here today with Coach Doug Sommer from Gladstone High School. How are you, sir?
Good. Good morning, my friend.
It's good to see you. For those who don't know, Doug was the first coach who ever hired me and got into high school football coaching. We've known each other for, the better part of 20 some odd years. And he's been around the block a little bit. So today we're going to talk about his coaching story, his coaching journey, essentially, and what he's learned from that and how we can help out some younger coaches that are getting into this. So, you ready to roll, Dougie?
I am. Let her rip.
All right. So, we're going to talk about your childhood. Where'd you grow up?
So I was born in Missouri, but I spent my first 7 years in Denver, Colorado, and then mom and dad split, and we moved to Corvallis when I was 7, and then the rest of the time just been in Oregon.
Okay, fantastic. So, you're down in Corvallis. What was the family situation? Who lived in the house with you?
So it was just me, my mom, and my sister, my older sister, and she wound up being a volleyball player at Oregon State, and um, and then my road into sports. But yeah.
Fantastic. So yeah, let's talk about that. How'd you get involved in athletics? Was it mom? Was it your sister playing? How'd that work?
Well, it's funky because I started out as the nerdy fat kid, that I hated PE. I didn't want to do any of that stuff. And then we moved to Oregon, and at Dixie Elementary School at recess, it started to be fun. And then I think I started youth football when I was 9, and really, 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 really liked it. The big kid had value there, the physicality of it, the speed of it. Um, my dad was a professional baseball player, but I couldn't hit a baseball to save my life. But went that route for a little bit, and but yeah, just started at recess. And back in those days too, something that's missing in today's world. We lived on a half acre 2 miles outside of Corvallis. So you ran in a field, you climbed a tree, you swam in a lake, all these things today that people go to athletic trainers for.
Hmm.
We did chasing the dog. So, it's funny how that part all evolved. If I would have stayed in Denver, I don't think I ever would have touched a football.
Well, it's interesting that you say that the big kid has value because I think that gets lost on what football brings to kids nowadays. That and parents are pulling their kids more and more out of football.
Oh,
They're
sure.
scared of the injuries. They're scared of things like that. But yeah, having those little chubby kids get into football and learn, like you said, value and self esteem and things like that is great. I didn't know your dad, as long as I've known you, played baseball. What was the highest level that he got to?
He got a cup of coffee with the St. Louis Cardinals in the 60s. He played at AAA. He was a second baseman. His back then, well, he get this in terms of weird story. His best friend growing up was Bob Gibson, the Hall of Fame pitcher, and they
Wow.
played on the same basketball team together. And that's how, back then with scouting and everything else, Bob Gibson said, "Hey, this guy's a pretty good second baseman." So the Cardinals had him in their organization, and his brother, who was 6'6", was a pitcher, and both of them got up AAA ish. His brother was better. Um, and then his brother, back then, they didn't make very good money. Screw it, I'm going to go be a farmer. So he quit baseball to be a farmer. And my dad said, "Oh, if you're not playing, I'm not playing." So he just quit playing.
Imagine that. Imagine that happening nowadays.
Oh, I know. Well, I worked with a guy at Willamette who was um, Green Bay Packers offered him a contract in 1954, and he was going to make more money working in a cannery than he was playing for the Packers. So he told them no because he wanted to get married.
Unbelievable. And yeah,
Oh,
and 70 years later, here we are, and nobody's
yeah.
going to turn on that kind of money.
Oh no, no.
That's crazy. So you're in Corvallis. Tell me about getting to Corvallis High School and athletics there, and how was that for you? Were you a good athlete there? Did you get accolades or anything?
So it's one of those fortuitous kind of things. Corvallis was back then the epicenter of um, high school sports. Well, Oregon State's there, but and Oregon State's basketball team was ranked first in the country back then. And the growing up, Corvallis was it. They on the radio all the time. Their home field was Research Stadium. Um, it was big, big time. Um, our our neighbor across the street from us was a professor at Oregon State, so he'd give us. He never wanted to go to the football games, so he'd give me tickets to go to the games. Never seating was never an issue because they were bad, but it started that, and then um, growing up in my era at Corvallis, I played with three guys that wound up playing in the NFL for 4 or more years. The Reynolds family, so Harold Reynolds, who's still on the MLB network, he was a senior when I was an eighth grader, and I'd go watch the American Legion games all the time. His brother Donnie, who played for Donnie left U of O, he was their second leading rusher all time behind Ahmad Rashad and played 9 years of Major League Baseball. My senior year, he was our running back coach. And so you had all of these legends. His brother, Larry, one of my teammates in high school, Mike Sandusky, who played 9 years as an offensive lineman, Larry was his agent because Larry played professional baseball and then got out and became a sports agent. Um, and well, going down that road. And then John Francis, who was a running back ahead of me, and John may be the best high school player I've ever seen, which says a bunch. But he played for the New York Giants and the Rams and the Patriots. And then Rob Thomas played as a receiver in the NFL for 9 years. Rob was a sophomore. So John was a senior when he was a year ahead. Mike was a year behind, and Rob was 2 years behind. But just being around that, I was a good football player. I wasn't great. I was about 6'3", about 270. I was in our league, the first team all league offensive lineman. One of them played in the NFL for 9 years. The other one played for 5. So I was a second teamer. Um, and then in track, I had the second best discus throw in the state of Oregon my senior year, and still number 2 all time at Corvallis, which somebody teased me that, hey, you're all coast almost.
Right.
Just a foot off the podium or, gee, a second. But I had a blast doing it. Played basketball for a year. And again, how great Corvallis was at the time. Mike Doherty was our basketball coach, and he's the winningest basketball coach in Oregon history. Um, my high school coach, Gary Beck, got put in the Hall of Fame. He won 3 state championships as a head coach before he was 30 years old. The coach before him, Chuck Solberg, another Hall of Famer, won 3 state championships at Corvallis, and then was running back coach at Oregon State, and um, then he went and coached at Lewis and Clark. If you ever have a chance to sit down with Chuck Solberg, do it. He may be the best storyteller ever. They called him Chit Chat Chuck for a reason, and
Nice.
he's phenomenal. But yeah, just around great, great people, and that climate there. Um, One of my best friends growing up wound up being the bullpen coach for the Cleveland Indians. And he's got his own baseball academy in Ohio now. And, um, just great players going through. Brad Badger was a younger kid that wound up playing offensive line for the Raiders for years. I mean, just amazing, amazing people. Lorena Woods, because the Woods family went through Corvallis. She owned just about every sprint record in the state or close to it. And then she was a great sprinter at U of O. Her brother, Marcus, was a nose guard at U of O. Just phenomenal, phenomenal athletes. My
Wow.
One of my roommates in college was an All-American javelin thrower, Jim Williams. My other one had just got put into the Hall of Fame at Willamette. Um, Academic All-American in football and baseball, and just great, great athletes around.
So being part of that culture really inspired pride and made it exciting to be in athletics.
Oh, absolutely. And the approach that um, you know the thing that I learned from then, part of my coaching deal is I tell every team every year our plans to win a state championship. And even at Milwaukee, when we walked into 1-26 over a 3-year span, I told them that, and people laughed. I go, I don't know how else to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And our first day, because back then there wasn't overtime, there weren't tiebreakers in the playoffs, in the championship. So our first day of practice every year, our head coach sat us down and we had to vote at the end of the game if we had a chance to tie or go for two, what we wanted to do. So the day we walked onto campus in August, we started thinking about a state championship. We thought about it all the time, but it was that made it real every year. Okay, we're going for two, or we playing for the tie. Okay, let's go.
That is interesting. Um, so you're done in Corvallis. You've played. You've had a little success. You're deciding what to do with the rest of your life, like every other 17 and 18-year-old, and probably not knowing what to do at 17 or 18. What led you to the next step, and what did you know you wanted to go to school? What were you thinking about at that point?
So I was recruited. I was a D1 recruit, and back then it was the Pac-8. Oregon, Oregon State, Washington, Arizona wasn't in the league back then. Cal, um, all made visits, recruited, sent film, whole deal. Wyoming and a bunch of the others. I had a girlfriend for the first time in my life, and gee, she was in Corvallis, and I thought, okay, well, boy, I'll stay around because we're going to last forever. Ha ha. And as the recruiting process went on, I had on letter of intent day, my senior year, I had my third knee surgery. And in terms of and I don't think I was a Division 1 athlete before that. I talked to Oregon State. They wanted me to walk on and track. I thought about doing that. Um, but in terms of, the destiny of the world, you remember the play from Stanford and Cal with Elway and all of that?
Sure, with the band.
That was my senior year in high school. Cal was recruiting me. After Cal wins that game, they stop recruiting me because they got bowl eligible and they found better players. I'm like, okay, there's a little justice. Um, but no, and I knew that I loved the high school sports. I had a blast doing it. I knew I wanted to go to school. I was going to be a CPA. And because for me, it was either the Pac-8 or bust. I never followed through with Big Sky, Portland State, Montana, any of that stuff. I didn't follow through with Western Oregon, Linfield. I said, screw it, either I'm going big or I'm not. And then when it was nothing, I go, well, crap, I'll go to Lynn Benton and figure out what I'm doing, and I'll throw the discus and hammer for a year while I'm figuring stuff out. So during the year, I realized how much I missed football. Well, two things happened. I took an intro to business class. I took an intro to accounting class, and I'm sitting there, and I looked around the room, and I realized I couldn't spend the rest of my life around people like this. It bored the hell out of me. And nice people, but I just go, I can't do this. And so, and I miss sports. I go, okay, well, I want to teach and coach. And then the other part about that changed my life was my first day in that class, I sat next, got my old Letterman's jacket on and all this stuff. Um, I sat next to this 40-year-old dude. And I said, what are you doing here? He goes, I'm trying to get and expand my education so I can make more money to take care of my family. And we always know that education is important and creates opportunity. That's the first time it was real for me because I was sitting next to it. And that little dialogue changed my perspective on a bunch of things. So then I threw the discus and hammer, and then I decided small college football was fine. Linfield and Willamette were the two that I chose to pursue. Ad Rutschman was the head coach at Linfield. I go on my visit there. He brings me in, sits me down, shakes my hand, and says, Doug, if you come to school here, we're going to win 2 national championships in the next 5 years, and you'll be an All American. Hopefully, you make it. I'll see you later. And then I was off on my visit, had a great time. Then I go to Willamette, where one of my high school teammates was at. Um, and they were starting from scratch. They had struggled the year before, got a new head coach. He'd been an assistant at Baylor for Grant Taft, a guy named Joe Broker, who was an amazing man, wound up being the president of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, just a great dude. He said, "Hey, look, we need you. Linfield's going to have 120 players, and they probably will win a national championship. We're going to keep no more than 85, and we bring kids here to play, and we need people that are winners to help us with our culture, and you'll come here and you'll help us do that." And for whatever reason, I mean, that hit home. I love winning and championships and all that stuff, but I thought, okay, well, I can be part of fixing this. And third day of practice, I broke my ankle all the way across, and had to have major surgery. That was surgery number 4 and 5, and I was 20 years old. And I thought, well, okay, so I go back to Corvallis, have the surgery. Well, school had already started at Willamette because they were on semesters. I go to get my stuff to register for class. Back then, Willamette didn't have an elevator. I fell down a flight of stairs, cracked my cast, ripped my stitches out. It looked like the shower scene from Psycho. There's blood everywhere. Got in my car, drove back to Corvallis, and told my mom I was done. And she said, "No, you can go back." I go, "No, I'm just done. I need some time off. I'll get a job, this, that, or the other." Well, Coach Broker called and said, "Where were you?" And I go, "Well, you see the blood in the hallway, man. I didn't make it." And um, he said, "Well, you've got to go back and register at Lynn Benton." I go, "I don't think so. I think I'm done." And he goes, "You've got a week to go register there. I'm going to drive down and take you there and register you myself. You're going to go stay in school." I thought, okay, so crap, I go did it. Went and registered. First time in my life, I got a 4.08 GPA. I went to school, studied, came home, rinse and repeat. And then, with the injury that bad, I didn't think I was going to play again. He called me. He always checked on my grades. He calls me in January saying, "Hey, you need to come back to Willamette." I go, "Coach, I'm done." He goes, "No, no, no, I'm going to hire you to coach." I go, "I'm 20 years old." He goes, "I'm going to hire you to coach. So finish out, and you're going to go to school, but you're not a graduate assistant. You're an undergraduate assistant, but you're going to come here and you're going to coach for us, and you're going to go." So I started meeting with the offensive line coach, and wound up being the JV offensive coordinator as a 20-year-old kid there. And it was just, man, the man changed my life. Just believed in me, created opportunity for me. That year, coaching in Willamette, like I said, had been awful. 5 games in, we are ranked in the top 20 and have a chance, the top 16 go to the national playoffs. We were 17. And I was helping coach the offensive line. We lost 3 offensive linemen in the span of a week. So I went to the head coach and said, "I've got eligibility. I'm passing my classes. I'll play." So I was a player coach for the last 4 games. I didn't start. I wanted to be a backup guy and help how I could help. Um, so yeah, and we wound up finishing ranked 17th and missing the playoffs by a game. But yeah, so
Wow. Yeah,
sorry
that's
about this.
man, that's interesting. Nowadays, I would be astonished to hear that a coach in college would care about a kid who isn't playing for them or who isn't one of their like top dudes, you know?
Oh, exactly, exactly. And I mean, how amazing that man was. But the other, just the way the world works out, the kid that was my backup wound up being a 2-time All-American. Um, and, I coached him, and the Linfield didn't win 2 national championships in the next 5 years. So,
uh,
so Coach Rutschman was right, at least about that. But everything worked out the way um, it was supposed to. So,
yeah. Okay. So you get done with school, and again, now you're graduated. You're ready to take on the world. What's your next step? And this is kind of where where, for those who don't know, again, when I met you, you had been the head coach at Milwaukee for a few years. Bridge the gap for me between graduating from Willamette and getting a coaching gig at Milwaukee.
I'll get this one. I got a degree in psychology from Willamette. So the way it worked is you got your degree and then you got certified to teach. So I got a degree in psychology and I got certified to teach social studies and math. Social studies teachers and math teachers were a dime a dozen. So when it came time to student teach in the fall of my senior year, um, the school had always set it up. I didn't let them. I went to schools in Salem and asked, hey, look, if I student teach here, can I coach? So I went to Sprague High School and they just hired Robin Hill as a coach. They were 0-9 the year before. Um, and they go, oh God, yeah, we need coaches. This will be great. So I was the JV head coach there and helped coach the O line and D line. And I got in so much trouble at Willamette. You don't get to pick. You don't get to. Sorry. Got a supervising teacher who was an alum, and that got me because I knew coaching was going to be the way I was going to get hired. I thought I was going to be, and I think I was a pretty good classroom teacher. But again, they were a dime a dozen. So I had to do something to set myself apart. So it Sprague that year, we went from 0-9. We finished 5-5. We make the playoffs. We're the lowest seed. We play number one ranked Lake Ridge with Tom Smythe, and they wind up winning the championship, but we lost 28-21. Played our butts off. God, it was a great game. Our kids, we had two kids, two D1 kids that wound up playing at Oregon. So, I mean, we were pretty good, but yeah, that was great. And so then I graduate and I do track in the spring. I'm back into throwing and stuff in college. Um, and I start looking for jobs. So Sprague didn't think they were going to have a job because that's what my hope was, is that I student teach and then get a job there. And then Tiger High School had a coaching position, but they didn't have a teaching position. So I drive up to Tigard High School. I was going to be an instructional assistant, work with the special ed kids, and do that kind of stuff. And I go up to sign my contract, and Sprague called and said, "Hey, we've got a job. I'm going to take the job." So I go to Tigard High School. We're out on the field during doubles, and some random kid comes up to me and says, "Hey, meet with the principal at 1 o'clock. Dress nice." What are you talking about? He goes, "I don't know. Just do it." So they had a teaching job. So I interviewed for and got a teaching job right before school started. So I started at Tigard High School with Craig Haston as the head coach, and we had Bob Ludwig was our offensive line coach, one of the best line coaches in the history of high school football. And just starting to build a program. First year there, we were 5-4. Next year, 5-4. We win. In terms of the world being small, we played Beaverton on the last game. We were in the Metro League at the time. Last game of the season, we're both 4-4. Winner of that game goes to the playoffs. Loser, the head coach, is probably going to get fired. Don McCarty was the head coach at Beaverton. We beat him in double overtime. He gets canned. We wind up going to the semis. And then the year after that, we tie Roseburg for a state championship because back then they didn't have overtime. So we tied them 14-14.
And
We
you
scored
guys
with 8 seconds.
chose to tie and not
We
go for
chose
the
to tie.
win. And that's
And I was on the headset telling Craig to go for the tie. And
yeah.
here's why: as good a coach as Craig Haston was, or he's a Hall of Famer, we had never practiced a 2-point play. We were a wing T team, and we ran the I and wing. We had the state player of the year in Jeremy Asher, who wound up being an all Pac 12 kid for the Ducks and playing for the Redskins and pretty good. Our fullback wound up playing 7 years for the Los Angeles Dodgers and was a Major League Baseball player. He was pretty good. We never practiced a 2-point play. We'd never been in wing left. And with 8 seconds left, and Craig was really, really hard on the kids. Jeremy Asher, who as good as he was, had 63 yards on 24 carries. So I didn't trust us from three. I kicked the ball, coach. As much as our kids had been through, we didn't because as a staff, we didn't prepare for that. That shouldn't be the responsibility of the kids. We shouldn't just hope and try and be lucky to have it happen. And Thurman Bell from Roseburg, there was a picture, them shaking hands, Craig smiling, and Thurman Bell looks like he just got kicked in the junk. Um, but you know, we he was really really hard on the kids, and just I didn't think it was right for the kids to get the short end because we didn't prepare. So we tied 14 all, last tie in a championship game in Oregon history.
Yeah,
Um,
that's just to put a pin in that real quick, and then I'll throw it back to you. That if you're a coach, you've heard that story, or you've heard that if you're a historian at all, you've heard that, that's the last tie. And when I started coaching with you, I heard that story. I just want to fast forward to the people that know me and that know us, and we get into the 2014 semifinal game and we go into overtime. The difference between then and now is you were on that staff. I was the offensive coordinator and grew under you. You bet your ass we had 2-point plays in. We were ready to go for it. We went to overtime. We scored the first touchdown, and we lined up to go for two. So that evolution of you as a coach, from a young coach to an older coach, we were prepared to go for two, and we were really confident we were going to go for two. Unfortunately, we snapped the ball about a second too late and got a penalty. We were going to walk in the end zone, though. But we snapped the ball too late, got pushed back, and then we kicked the one. But just your evolution, you can see it right there as a coach that you used to go for one. Now you're ready to go for two.
Sure. And don't, set your kids up for success. Gary Beck, the first day of practice, hey, are we going to go for a tie or a win? And I never thought that would come up. But, I get the Milwaukee job. We did the same thing. And again, people laughed at me, um, but no, we didn't. By then they had overtimes. But you want your kids, you try to prepare for every situation. And so that's part of the stuff that you learn as you go through it. Again, I still have a state championship ring and the video and all that. It's really, really cool. It would have been nice to win 15-14 instead of tie 14 all. But hey.
Yeah, but you got that experience. So you tie, you've got the state tiger. What happens after that?
So then Tualatin's going to open. And
And what year are we talking here?
this is 91 is when
Okay.
Tualatin opens.
Okay.
And Craig Haston is going to go be the new coach at Tualatin. I was 20, yikes, 26. And there was no way in hell I was going to get the Tiger job. But I interviewed for it because they have to give you an interview. I go, oh, this is good practice. Kid you not, the principal fell asleep during the interview. And Ludwig was now the athletic director. And I asked Bob, I said, well, hey, you want to wake him up so we can finish this, or do we need him? And he was so embarrassed. And I'm like, we're good. I got the practice. So I go with Craig to Tualatin to be the defensive coordinator there. Um, First year, we didn't have seniors. Uh, so we played an independent, because there were only 4 classifications at the time, played an independent 3A schedule. We opened first game at Tualatin ever was at Woodland High School in Washington. We played Toledo. We played all the coast schools, Toledo, Newport, all of those. I think we won. Sherwood was a 3A school back then. I think we won 3 or 4 games. And then the next year, that group of seniors, and Dustin Staley was one of them, and he wound up playing it all 2-year starter at Brigham Young, and he was a senior. Cam Carrillo, who was the only parade All-American I ever coached, he was a linebacker, tight end for us. I mean, we had good football players. We we go to the playoffs. We lose in the quarterfinals, and I was with Craig. Um, I don't know, till 96 at Tualatin, and then that was the funk two of Tiger Tualatin District. is that I'd been in the district for 9 years. By the time I decided to leave, I was still on the second step of the pay scale because the union was doing a cruddy job. So 9 years into teaching, I was making $19,000 a year, and I couldn't do it anymore. So one of our coaches, when I coached at Tigard, Jerry Williams was our running back coach and the JV head coach, and he had been an assistant at University of Washington for Don James. He'd been a head coach at Ashland, and he's maybe the smartest football coach I've ever been around in my life. Watching him call a game, I never and he used to this used to piss him off. I never saw him call a bad play. And if I say good call, he'd go, "Stop, you're gonna jinx me." Um, but I as we're done with the state championship, I go, well, hey, I'm gonna look around a little bit. So Barlow was open. So I called Brad Garrett, who wound up being the OSAA director, was the AD there. I called Brad and I said, so hey, and he goes, well, we need some head coaching experience. And so I get off the phone. I go down to Jerry's office. I give him Brad's number. And he goes, what's this? I go, call him. You're going to be the next head coach of Barlow. He goes, what? I said, just do it. And he was the next head coach of Barlow, took them to the semis, won a bunch of games there. Um, but anyhow, back to the Tualatin and stuff. So when I got 9 years in and I wasn't making any money. Jerry was the head coach of Barlow. He said, come over here. John Beck was his defensive coordinator. He says, hey, come over here, join my staff. I think Beck's going to leave. He's trying to get out of here. Then you can take over as the DC. Um, Sweet. So just by driving from Tigard to Barlow, I went from 19 grand a year to 45,000 a year. So that kind of helped.
Yeah.
People laugh at you because that's kittens and chickens, but um, so I was there for a year, and Jerry got into some trouble with some parents and resigned, and I was a finalist for the head coaching job there after a year, um, and it came down to me and Terry Summerfield for the job. Terry was the head coach at Central Catholic. He was also the athletic director, and I interviewed really, really well, and I think the people at Barlow liked me. Um, And so it came down to us two. Brad says, hey, calls me and says, hey, we need to talk, come out. And it was the last part of the process. I'm sitting outside his office, and Terry comes out and he's grinning ear to ear. And I go, congratulations. He goes, oh, yeah, no, you got the job. That's why you're smiling. And then he goes, yeah, I need to talk to you. So I go, and Brad says, well, yeah, he's got head coaching experience. And so we're going to go with him. I go, that's fine. I get it. So then Terry offers me the head coaching job at Central Catholic and the AD gig. And I go, how can you do that? He goes, I'm the AD. I can do that. And I said, well, why are you leaving? He goes, well, I've got a family and I need PERS and medical benefits. And I go, yeah, so private schools don't have that. So that's when I went to Milwaukee. Coach Ward offered me a position there. And I created my niche in education by building alternative ed programs. So I started one at Tualatin High School. I started one at Barlow. And then, so part of the reason Milwaukee wanted to hire me is to set up and run their alternative school. So took a position there and was defensive coordinator for Coach Ward. And first year we go 5-4. Great group of kids. We give up 13 points a game. For a year before, they gave up 33. That group of kids only gave up 13 a night. We finished the top 10 in the state defensively, but didn't make playoffs. And then it tanked for Rick. We went 1-26 the next 3 years, and I applied for the head coaching job. And it was interesting that Alan Summers, who was the vice principal at the time, was on the committee, and um, again, they knew me and they liked me, but I didn't have any head coaching experience. So they said, "Well, what are you going to do if you don't get the job?" And I looked at him and I go, "I'm out of here." I go, "I got to rebuild my reputation." I go, 1-26. I'm not going to get hired anywhere. I want to be a head coach. I deserve to be the head coach here. And I said, hey, Coach Fenger at Lewis and Clark College offered me a position to coach tight ends. So yeah, I mean, I'm gone. And I said the other reason you should hire me is I use the analogy, hey, gone to bed with Milwaukee, know what it looks like in the morning when you wake up, and I still want the job. So um, they wound up hiring me and got started with that, and there we go.
Fantastic. And what was your first year as a head coach there?
2001.
2001. Okay. And here's a nice little blast from the past for you. I did dig up this nugget.
Uh-oh. Oh, there we go.
2004, which I believe was
Sweet.
my first year there.
Yep.
There's some good looking jerseys and some uniforms there.
From Florida State. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah, those tell the story real quick about how the Florida State jerseys came about.
So I get the job, and we're church mice and we're poor and everything else. So an alum from Milwaukee calls me and says, "Hey, you guys want Florida State jerseys?" I go, "What?" Coach Bowden didn't like the color, didn't think it matched the color that they wanted. It's pretty close to yours. We'll give them to you for free. I go, so he goes, so all you got to do is number them. Sweet. So we got Florida State home and away. And then we got the number silk screen on there. They looked great. The bad part is one, you could never replace them. And
Mhm.
two, they had giant individuals at Florida State, and we had a bunch of little kids. So we only got a couple years out of them, but it was really cool. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, those were fun. Talk about so you get the head job at Milwaukee. Talk about developing a program and how you kind of did that, kind of dig into the community, dig into the youth program. What was your strategy there?
Well, so the to me the hardest part at Milwaukee, I mean, back then though it was more blue collar. Now it's more welfare-ish, but it was a little more blue collar community. Um, was kind of the stepchild of the North Clackamas School District, and one thing I noticed about the school is they were great at making excuses. It was woe is me, gee, we can't. I heard that a ton, and I just got tired of it. And so, just like with our coaching staff, we always say, hey, tell us what you can do. Don't tell us what a kid can't do. Um, and so we just started working from no, let's talk about what we can do to fix this and make it right. Accountability was lacking. And then there was just a rut of we're going to be bad and we're going to stay bad. So why try? There was this learned helplessness. And that didn't work. Like I said, we're 1-27, and I go, hey, we're going to win a state championship. We went 0-9, but damn it, we practiced like a state championship team. So trying to change the thought process of we're bad, we're crappy, we're selfish. We had to deal. I call them urban legends. There were good athletes that didn't go out for sports because they failed. And so if you try and your very, very best and you fail, failure is personal. If you don't try hard, it's not. It's, oh, the team sucked. The coach was bad. I would have been better. I was better than this. And we had built in excuses. So we just tried to attack that right off the bat, too. Roland Omuller was my offensive line coach, and he's, the core of what was good about Milwaukee High School, believing in kids, working hard, helping them overcome, and just persevere. He's in the lessons that he taught. He's the probably the greatest throws coach in track and field Oregon high school history. With all of those big good athletes that he had, it was time. If he put in the time with them and they worked and worked and worked, they could get better. And that lesson, I think, started to travel around the school. Like, oh, okay, if we put in the time, this guy just won a state championship. This girl just won a state championship and got recruited, and yeah. So that was the big part of the fix.
Tell me your best moments of coaching there, and this could be on the field, off the field. What was a couple of your best moments from your years there?
I've said this, and again, I've coached 40 years and been around a bunch of wins and some championships. I've never been in a place where winning feels so good than it does at Milwaukee, because Milwaukee was never supposed to win. And so every game we won felt really, really good. Um, Clearly, us making the playoffs um, was big. Um, we beat St. Helens last game of the season to get in. We'd beaten West Lynn the week before, or 2 weeks before. We beat Oregon City in overtime, beaten West Lynn 29-28, 2-point play late in the game. Um, that was big. Um, Being able to beat Putnam our last few years there. Um, just it felt good. The kids had bought in. Um, we turned the corner with efforts. They believed in each other. They started working hard. Our coaching staff got better. Probably the getting into the playoffs, and it's funny too because and we talked about this during the state championship at Gladstone. Um, People talk to you about pressure and gee, it's state championship and semis, and I've never felt more pressure in my life than I did at the St. Helens game because we
Mm.
were 4-4, week 9. If we win, we make the playoffs for the first time in 15 years. If we lose, we don't. Um, and I'm like, God, these kids have worked too hard. Our coaches have worked too hard. I can't fail. And so that's the most pressure I've ever felt in a game, and that's part of why it felt so good to win. Um, but yeah, that was amazing. I love the kids there. When I left there to go to Wilsonville, telling kids was really, really difficult to do. Um, so
Well, and we'll talk about that in a moment too. And let's focus on the coaches and players at Milwaukee. Name a couple coaches and players that either just influenced you or they're memorable. Who were your best players in your years there? What did you pull out of that today you go, wow, he was a great coach, or I loved coaching with him, or wow, what a great kid, or what a great athlete?
So player wise, Benny Dixon was phenomenal. Benny was runner up for Player of the Year in the Three Rivers League behind um, Andy Darkins at Lake Oswego, so he was pretty darn good. Um, he was one of the best. Carl was really, really good, wound up being an all-state kid there and a Division I kid. Jason Chandler, maybe outside of John Francis, maybe one of the best high school athletes I've ever seen. um, 4'6", 40 kid, 300-pound bench presser. A guy named Kenny Taylor, who played for the Chicago Bears, trained our kids for a couple of sessions, and he saw Jason. He goes, Jason could be like a 23-foot long jumper. And I go, wouldn't surprise me. Uh, he was phenomenal. Uh, Ryan Saban was uh, led the Three Rivers League in yards per game as a running back again, which took some doing. With Lake Oswego and West Lynn and Clackamas and Oregon City and lowly little Milwaukee, having kids competing with that. Um, Yeah, there's some really, really good ones. Jimmy Heyman wound up football scholarship to Eastern Washington, was a state heavyweight wrestling champion, really good thrower. Um, yeah, there was just good, tough, physical, athletic kids, and they were one of my favorite kids was probably Brad Scranton, who as a freshman, he dyed his hair blue and got all of our helmets blue. Um, and he was full of fertilizer, but always in a good way. I mean, just a really good kid. Wiley Watkins lives up to his Wiley version. What a fun kid. Yeah, there were some really, really good ones. John Phelps, who wound up playing at Willamette. Um, it's funny because he had this giant, huge fro, and now he's bald as a billiard ball. But he was a really good kid, good football player, owns his own business now. Yeah, there were good ones, a lot of good people, and coaching with you and Mom. Got to coach with Bobby, my wife's nephew. Scott Gronvold was with us. Um, John Romanaggi, Brad Lynn, Jim Hellier. And Jim could be a polarizing dude, but boy, he understood the wing T and he was pretty smart offensively. Um, and he helped me mature as a coach quite a bit. Um, but yeah, it was good. It was the group of people. I think the most important thing a coach does is hire assistants because they're the ones that are going to change people's lives. So the group of people that we ultimately had around our kids, I think, did a great job. Dan Lee was on our staff, did a really good job for us. So yeah,
Yeah, that was great. And you mentioned Carl. So Carl was on our show, a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, to tell his story and talk about his basically meeting you as a kid and growing up and not being very good at football either. He's said, I wasn't very good when I was fourth, fifth, sixth grade. And I said, well, bullshit. By the time I met you as an eighth grader, you were a stud. um,
oh yeah.
but what was it like coaching Carl and getting him coming into the program?
That was it. It took some step. It was not always easy. It was Bobby is the queen mama bear and Carl is his stepson, and he's my son now. I mean, we've grown into that. Um, but I coached my boys hard. And I always joke if anybody ever reads about me being beat to death by a baseball bat in my sleep, one of the boys got even with me. I never physically harmed my kids, but just I was demanding as hell. They both told me they wanted to be great. I said, okay, well, this is what great players do. Um, Carl is a freshman. Uh, we're doing our 7-on-7 stuff and he doesn't he runs his drags too shallow, and I said, hey, you got to get that 10 to 12, and he goes it was, and I lit him up. I go, hey buddy, I'm not doing this just to hear my own voice. You got to run the damn route, and I ripped him. And excuse me, he we get into the car driving home, got the cold shoulder. By the time I get home and I'm milling around the house, Bobby was giving me the cold shoulder, just getting grief left and right. And I stopped them both. I said, hey, look, if Carl doesn't want to get coached, he's got to go back to Cleveland. If he's going to play for me, then he needs to do what he's freaking taught to do. And so that was one of the starts. And then after his first term in high school. He didn't get after it very well academically. And so I got brochures from all these JCs in California. And I came home and I threw them on the table. And he goes, what are these? And I said, these are the only places you'll be able to go unless you get your act together in the classroom. Got the cold shoulder for that one for a while. But no, one of the things, as hard as it got sometimes, one of my favorite pictures I have in my house is after his last game at Wilsonville when we lose in the semis, and he's crying his eyes out. I'm crying my eyes out, and I'm hugging him. And Cam was our ball boy, and he's got his little hoodie on, and he's staring up, and he's crying his eyes out. And the moment that we looked at each other and say, hey, as hard as it was, it brought us so much closer. That's, I think, coaching him helped us love each other because we respected each other more and more for the stuff that we went through. He understood more of why I was difficult, and I respected him more as an individual because of it wasn't always easy to be Carl Sommer. So yeah, that was really really good. It was tough for Carl because he was a really really good athlete, and people thought that he got the breaks that he got because Daddy was the head coach, and that one did it all. So
Yeah, and Carl, we asked him about this move, and we'll talk about here now the transition from Milwaukee to Wilsonville. But from Carl's perspective, he had mentioned it was good timing because he maybe wasn't doing the best in school and maybe needed a little bit of a change. And I believe
Sure.
he said he got in a fight and he,
Oh, big one.
yeah. And so he needed that change. So you're at Milwaukee, and tell me about we made the playoffs for, like you said, the first time in 15 years. The program is getting better and better. You're really riding a high as a coach at this point. And I remember being even in the community, it was like, wow, people are talking about like the high school football program being pretty cool. And
Sure.
that's was different from when I had gotten there when we were 0 for the year before, right?
Sure.
So you're riding high. Describe the switch to Wilsonville, how that all happened.
So it was interesting. So um, my ex-wife, Cam's biological mother, we split when he was 5 years old. So in 1999. And Cam was now, let's see, 2005, so we made it. So he was 10 or 11. Um, we had just won. George Crace, who I coached with at Willamette, he was our offensive coordinator there, and I was in the box with him helping call the run game. He was the head coach at Wilsonville, started the program there. Um, he had been the head coach at West Lynn, and he took over Wilsonville when it opened. Anyhow, he was going to leave to open Horizon Christian. He called me and asked, he said, "Hey, Doug, I'm getting out. I think you'd be perfect to take this job. I'm going to push for you." And I didn't want to leave Milwaukee, but then I started to think to myself, my ex wife was teaching in Milwaukee High School. Cam, her biological son, she hadn't talked to him for 5 years. Not a birthday card, not a Christmas present, not a phone call, nothing. And Cam was almost to the point where he was going to go to, if I stayed at Milwaukee, he was going to go to school at Milwaukee High School, where his biological mom that didn't care about him was working. I didn't think that was good. I didn't think that was healthy. So the timing, I was a fairly hot commodity at the time. The shitty part is people think that I used Milwaukee for the bigger, better deal. If my ex-wife wasn't there, I'd still be at Milwaukee today. Um, but Wilsonville came calling. They reached out to me. It was a great opportunity for Carl, and Cam wouldn't have to be around his mom. Um, Aylin Summers was now the working for the district office, and I respected her a ton. And I took her out for a coffee, and I said, "Hey, give me some advice on this. I love Milwaukee, but with my son's situation and Wilsonville's good program." And she asked me point blank, she goes, "What problems do you have coaching at Milwaukee today?" And I rattled them off, and she said, "Are they any different than the problems you had 5 years ago?" And I go, "No." And she goes, "That's why I'm telling you it's a good idea to go, because you're working your butt off, and nobody's trying to help you." And so the number one driving force was my ex-wife. Number two was I thought Wilsonville was a pretty good opportunity. And then three, I think Aylin made a great point that I was going to be banging my head against the wall for another 30 years if I stayed there. So that's how I became a Wildcat.
So you packed up the truck, you moved to Beverly, like
Oh, yeah.
here come the Clampets, right? You're getting to
Oh,
Wilsonville.
exactly.
And it was definitely culture shock. Describe your level of culture shock when you really dug your nails into the school and the community and things like that.
It took, well, our first year we won a bunch of games. We wound up going to the semifinals. We had really, really good talent, but we weren't great workers. And we weren't great. We weren't very tough. And I always think your first year at a place, you try and figure out what the problems are. And I thought our number one issue was entitlement. Um, and the to battle that, you've got to break some people down and some rules down, and you got to dig your heels in on some stuff. And I didn't have the support to do that. What you're winning, that's all that matters, and that's not what matters the most to me. um, I think that our the cultural level, I do better with blue collar kids than I do with money. It's not that I can't coach those kids, but I relate. I grew up poor, So I relate better to kids that have a little bit of a struggle. I was single parent, all that kind of stuff. Not that we didn't have good relationships with kids. I wasn't a fit in that community. Um, there were some really, really good people. Neil Oakes is on my coaching staff today that I coached him there. There's, kids in that group that the Bainies, I'm still close to their family, with them. So, I mean, there was a lot of good. I just wasn't the right fit. I really wasn't. And it's funny, Bob Soda, who's an orthopedic surgeon, and I got to know him through Steve Corey at Lake Oswego. Um, he said, "Oh yeah, Doug, he goes, I was afraid that's going to be." He goes, "That's not your kind of place." And I go, "Yeah, you're right." But a great experience, and I'm glad I did it, and it worked out better for me. I got a ton of opportunities, and um, it was something that I needed to do. I grew a lot of that. It was painful there, leaving the circumstances, but I learned. Um, as disappointed as I was in the people that I trusted, one of the biggest things I learned, and when I've been interviewed, I'll talk to people about this, for jobs, is that I didn't connect enough with the people in charge. I've always perceived the person in charge was my supervisor, the athletic director. And the lesson that I learned at Wilsonville is no, it's the principal and the superintendent. And they need to be connected. I need to have relationships with them. They need to know me and what my plan is. So if their phone rings or if an issue comes up, they're not guessing. And when at Wilsonville, when some parents started to stir because I was hammering the accountability piece pretty hard and you got pushback, the people answering the phone just knew that people were complaining. And so that was one of the great learning experiences for me. I wish administratively things would have been handled different, but it worked out great. Being at Gladstone High School is one of the best, most positive moves ever, and it wouldn't have happened if everything was smooth sailing at Wilsonville. So glad it worked out.
So same thing with Wilsonville. Give me a couple names of kids and coaches that are memorable for you that you will never forget.
Carl was great there. Jesse Staub, who was wound up being a national championship javelin thrower, um, was a phenomenal athlete, tough as nails, physical. Um, Boy, he was good. And they're good players, but the last year we were there when we lost in the play-in game and we only won 3 games. Um, we started 8 sophomores and a freshman, and of those sophomores, Cam was a D1 kid. Sione Cowie was a D1 kid. Johnny Reagan was a D1 kid. He was a freshman, though, didn't play for us. Shipley was a D1 kid. And there was one other one that I can't remember. So, when one of the things that did piss me off after leaving is sports writer said that I left the program in shambles. Bull crap. If we would have stuck around, we would have put some trophies in the case because there were some great players. One of my favorite players ever was 52, Matt Lynch. He was a first team All State offensive lineman at 170 pounds and just great personality. After we lost in the semifinals, um, he's the last one in the locker room. And I said, "Come on, Matt, we got to get on the bus." And he goes, "I thought you were kind of a joke and I was going to hate you when you first got here, but I like playing for you, coach." And I said, "Well, I thought you were a little turd that wasn't going to be very good in the offensive line, but I'm glad you played." And so, yeah, we had a good moment. But Matt gave me an idea that I'm going to try and implement at Gladstone. You remember Grilled Cheese Thursdays?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, so I go, "What the hell are you doing, grill?" He goes, "We just get a grill and we cook grilled cheese and people stand around and talk. It's a lot of fun." So I may start up Grilled Cheese Thursdays at Gladstone just to hang out. But yeah, good kid.
Yeah, and you had mentioned Neil earlier. Not to gloss over Neil. Neil ended up being a player in the Les Schwab Bowl and was pretty damn good himself. And yeah, there were some definite talented kids. What about coaches that are memorable with you there at Wilsonville?
Well, wait, one other player, Sean McKelvey was
Oh,
phenomenal.
very good
Michael
athlete. Yeah,
McKelvey
and
was phenomenal.
his brother, yeah,
Yeah,
Michael was really good
yeah,
too.
great athletes. Um, Coaching wise, you were on my staff. Scott came with me for a year but didn't like it. Jeremy Nichols, who was our secondary coach, wound up getting head coaching gigs. Really good technically. His dad, Mike, uh, one of the best people you'll ever meet in your life. He's still close to the boys. Good dude. I like him a lot. Um, Josh Fink was good for us. Did the weight room stuff. Um, yeah, we had some interesting characters. Tim Baker um, and his ability to show up late for a meeting and leave a line there for you. Um, but yeah, no, it was fun. A lot of fun, folks.
So you leave Wilsonville. Cam is a sophomore, or he's going to be a junior. So you leave Wilsonville. What's the next step look like at that point? Like, did you know where you wanted to go? Were you feeling places out? What was that like?
So when I resigned in February, I was offered 9 assistant coaching jobs, and anywhere from Beaverton to Gladstone to Lake Ridge um, Liberty to there were a bunch of them. And so I told Cam, I said, "Hey, look, we're not keeping you in school." It got pretty bitter at Wilsonville. Um, I go, "You're not staying here. So if you want me to coach you, pick one of these 9 places, and I'll make it work. And if you just want me to be a dad, then tell us where you want us to move to, and we'll go." So I tried to get back to Milwaukee, but my ex was still there and didn't think that was a good idea, so didn't do that. Um, and so it came down. I let Cam pick. It came down to John Wolf and Gladstone and Tom Smythe and Lake Ridge. Talk about polar opposites. Tom had offered me a job as his DC and wanted to kind of groom me as his heir apparent there. I said no, so he brought in Chad Carlson. Sorry about that one. But Cam picked. And little did I know, I didn't know this one until this last year. Carl really picked. He told Cam where at Gladstone, Coach Wolf you had to be a certain number of workouts to play, and Cam liked the idea of people working hard. I didn't know that Carl was pushing him, saying we got to get a place closer for mom's work. Milwaukee, Gladstone's closer than Lake Ridge, so pull pull the trigger. So he picked John Wolf and Gladstone, and again, great decision. And the hard part, it was hard. I mean, the transition was hard for him. The thing that made it harder is his best friend had just drowned during that summer. Colton Hawley was on a wrestling trip. Jason Millam, who's a really good friend of mine, is the head wrestling coach. Poor Colton, they were at 10 o'clock at night jumping. I think they were at Detroit Lake, and all there hundreds of kids out there swimming. Poor Colton came up underneath the dock and wound up drowning. And we were in the process of moving, and part of the thing that made the Gladstone choice the right one is when Cam went to Colton's celebration of life at Wilsonville, 5 or 6 of those kids went with him and put their arms around him and cried with him, and it was pretty powerful. So he went from Wilsonville, where he was we were pushed out a little, and to a place that opened arms and loved him. And so yeah, it was the right choice. Clearly the right choice. We're still there today.
So you went to Gladstone. Wolf was running the offense. Jed, the future head coach, was running the defense. So you come in and you're an assistant. So you've gone from head coach and coordinator to being an assistant. What's the transition like making that move?
Well, it's funky because I don't think coaches can be good coaches unless they have egos. If you have a big ego, though, I don't think you're a very good coach. My deal, everything was in perspective. Coach Wolf stuck out the branch to me, gave a landing place for my son. I just wanted to help. I didn't go there to change John. I didn't go there to change Jed. I went there to help them and help the team win games. Before Cam showed up, they were 2-7, back to back 2-7 years. Um, and then Cam's first year, they go 12-1 and lose in the semis. And it wasn't just because of Cam; it was great group of kids. Drew Walters, great character. They work their ass off. John does a great job of teaching work ethic and his core values. And I think, other than Cam being, all-state player, um, just having conversations. So I'm not saying the stuff that I've coached and done is right, but the conversation, it was like, why do you do this? Or, gee, have you ever thought about? Um, and it was great. It's funky because I was the only coach in the box. I was on the phones offensively and defensively, and um, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
So, and we're limiting this to your first stint at Gladstone, which ended up being, a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches and players, let's rinse and repeat, like you said earlier. Describe some of those coaches and players that you'll never forget.
Well, Drew Walters is just one of the best people you'll ever meet. He's Cam's real estate agent now. He's still a booster to the program. Just a great, great person and kid. Um, Dennis Kiley was a volunteer in the weight room that helped our kids with the strength program. And DK passed away a couple years ago in November. What a great man he was. Fabian Sanchez was a all-state player for us, and his younger brother transferred from Clackamas to be with us. He's going to be a senior in our program this next year. Was really good. And then I'm such an idiot. I'm always late to the show. We had a quarterback that was actually a really good quarterback, Eamon Burrell, and his uncle is Ty Burrell from Modern Family. And I had kids were talking about it, and this is when it was on the air and heyday and all this stuff. And I didn't start watching the show until after Eamon had graduated. I'm like, now it's my favorite show. I'm like, wow, I missed an opportunity to touch bases with Ty Burrell. Um, Joe Baker was our quarterback. He was the offensive player of the year in conference when Cam was a junior. Dalton Moe was a sophomore running back, really good football player. Um, Nick Hernandez, nose guard, athletic fullback, fun kid. Um, yeah, really, really good kids.
And
Good
I'd
players
also
too.
throw in there Oscar Sanchez,
Yep.
Fabian's younger brother, who, when I got there, was a junior, I believe, either junior or senior. Maybe he was a senior. And then AJ Prom as well.
Yeah. AJ wound up playing at Eastern Oregon.
Yeah, that was I got there Cam's senior year, and that team was loaded with talent. Yeah. And Wolf did a great job with the program, and RIP to DK, who lifted the shit out of those kids.
Oh,
and
yeah.
was just such a big reason why the program was successful, the decade stretch that it was with Wolf. Yeah. Coaches that you coached with back then, again, memorable coaches. And I will say this before you say any other names. Me coming into the program with you and both of us being assistant coaches is probably the worst migraines that John Wolf has ever had.
Oh, absolutely.
And you as an assistant coach and not having the trials and tribulations of the daily, just being a head coach and not having that life, you were a pretty good fuck around assistant head coach.
I was hell on wheels. Yeah, I was hell on wheels.
We had a great year together. But describe the coaching staff back then when you first round through, and just who kind of either you learned from or was memorable.
Well, it's funny because John, I think part of how Gladstone stagnated a little bit is John got his inner circle and he just kept filling, from building up from the youth program, which there's nothing wrong with, but everybody thought the same way that he did. And and I know I shortened his lifespan by asking the questions that I asked, but trying to get him to think about different things. One of the coaches that great program guy, Ryan Shasson, who still supports me in the program today, was a really, really good dude. Um, those are the ones that stand. Ryan stands out the most. Dan Lee was with us too. Um, there's Jed did a really good job, and Jed gave me an opportunity a couple years later. Um, so yeah, those are the ones that I think stand out the most, coach wise.
All right, and then memorable moments, whether it's wins, losses, coaching Cam. What are the most memorable moments from that
Well,
stretch?
it's fun. I mean, clearly it was fun coaching Cam with not being the head coach, and watching him develop as become an all-state player and a D1 kid. We had a lot of fun. Um, the loss to LaSalle came senior year when LaSalle got a fifth down and they kick a 47-yard field goal that hits the upright, rolls, and then goes back over, and they wind up beating us. Um, the Cam's junior year when we played Banks at home, and there must have been 10,000 people there and hugging the track, and we score late in the game to win that one. Um, Boy, his last game when we lost to Central up there, we lose by, I think we lost by 6. We turned the ball over 7 freaking times, I think, and because we could have won it that year. And
Mm-hmm.
Cam just not wanting to leave the field because it meant so much to him. Um, our first, well, no, that's down the road. Um, but no, I think those were the big ones um, that I'll never forget.
I'll also throw in there the trips to Vernonia in the summer, the team trips.
Oh yeah,
I got to go on one when I came over there with you, and then a few more after. But those things seem to be fewer and fewer nowadays as more schools are have gotten into trouble, or the kids have acted up, or schools just don't do those kind of team trips as much anymore.
no,
But boy, the bonding on those was great, and the bonding with the coaching staff was phenomenal, and the chemistry there was just really, really good at the time. And that was within the first few years of, like I said, a decade long run that was pretty good for the Gladiators. And part of that was that chemistry. Vernonia was great.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Cam graduates and he's gone. He's off to Portland State. You go to West Lynn. What was the draw to going to West Lynn?
Well, Phil, I always think it's better to teach and coach in the same building. And I didn't bail on John just because Cam was done. Mike Fenger got the head coaching job at West Lynn, and I was one of his first calls. And he goes, "Hey, look, you're in the building." Um, he called me, called John Telsmanich, who he played with at Lewis and Clark, and said, "Hey, want to be on staff and this, that, or the other?" Sure. So I had a chance to teach and coach in the same building. And Fang, like I said, when I got my first head coaching job at Milwaukee in 2001, was the head coach at Lewis and Clark, and he'd offered me a um, tight end. It was funny. That's part of why I started like Fang. He had a linebacker job and a tight end job, and I said, "I'll take either." And he goes, "Well, which one do you want?" I go, "Where are the players better?" And he goes, "Well, we have really good tight ends." I go, and then he stops. He goes, "Well, wait a minute. I might coach tight ends because they're that good." I go, "Okay." So, but yeah, so that's why I left. I had great experience at Gladstone, and the other part too is I felt like I had helped John and Jed, develop a little bit in the football world and help their staff rethink some things. And it was just a good time to get back to teaching and coaching in the same space.
And you ended up being the DC at West Lynn.
Correct.
Okay,
For
so
two
you're back.
years, and then Fang stepped aside, and Chris Miller came in, and I didn't connect with Chris, and so I wasn't going to do that.
So you spent a couple years there at West Lynn. Let's give me the quick rundown too of a couple players and a couple coaches there that you really enjoyed being with.
Well, Butch Self, who was our offensive line coach, is now my offensive coordinator. I got to coach his son Tyler, who wound up being a state championship wrestler at Glencoe. Um, there's boy, I can't. I'm trying to remember Kevin Edwards is far and away one of my favorite players of all time. Kevin was a second team all league linebacker, and I thought he got screwed. He had about 12 tackles per game. Um, he was, like in Wilsonville, I said I don't do great with rich kids. I wasn't a great teaching wise, I was fine there, but coaching wise, Kevin was one that truly and completely bought into me, and we developed a great relationship. He had physical limitations. Um, he had a defect in his sternum that it kind of stuck out a little bit. But one of the best leaders. He wound up being a captain on the state championship basketball team there. Um, when Peyton Pritchard was a freshman, um, just an amazing, amazing kid. He's really, really successful. We still touch bases when he comes to town. Just a great kid. Um, we had some players that wound up being pretty good. Well, Peyton Pritchard was a freshman quarterback that I always tell people he may be the only kid that I've ever been around in 40 years of coaching because he quit football. He goes, I'm going to focus on basketball. And I go, well, focus. Well, what do you mean? Oh, no. We'd be out, he'd dribble around the track 2 miles worth, right hand, left hand between the legs. His fingertips would be bloody. Then he'd do push ups, and then he'd go shoot 100 shots, and then he'd do it again. Yeah, he was pretty good at it. Um,
Yeah, he's not bad.
but yeah, it set the tip. They were good players coming through. Elijah Molden was our starting corner as a freshman. We played in a playing game against Southridge. They had a kid that was going to Arizona, a receiver that was going a scholarship kid to Arizona. We said, screw it, put Elijah on him wherever he went. Um, the kid going to Arizona had one catch for 9 yards. Elijah had 2 picks and 36 yards in returns. So he worked out pretty well.
Yeah, he's not too shabby either. He's playing on Sundays now.
Yeah, he's starting for the Chargers before he got hurt, so he's okay. Um, so yeah, he was probably the best one. It was funky too because um, Evan Voller was a senior my first year there, and Evan was a top 5 O line kid nationally. He really didn't pan out he didn't play for us defensively, but went to Oregon, played a little bit there.
Nice. So you Chris Miller comes in, and again, you kind of mentioned that you weren't really jiving with Chris Miller. So at this point, you don't know where you're going to go, what you're going to do, and you end up back at Gladstone. So describe that.
Well, it was funky because I wasn't searching head coaching jobs. I think I looked at Newberg, and that was about it. And then um, I kind of waited with the Miller stuff to see if it was going to be a fit. So it was a little bit later. And Jed had just gotten the Gladstone job. I applied for that, I think, and did. Well, I don't think. I know I applied for it and didn't get it. Um, and so I thought, um, well, hell, I might not coach this year, which was kind of funky. But I thought, I'll take some time. And so when he gets the job, you were on staff with him and you were pushing, hey, Doug's not coaching, give him a shot. Doug's not coaching. And there was a person, I'm not going to say the name in recording, there was a person in his ear saying that, well, don't hire Doug. It's a coup. He's going to try and take over the job and this, that, or the other. And he was really, really, really leery of doing that. He wanted Ryan to be his defensive coordinator, which fine with me. And I said, hey, look, you're a first year head coach. If you want to hire me to help you, great. If not, I get it. Um, John Tells Manage interviewed with him and decided to not take the job. And he said, hey, you're stupid if you don't hire Doug. And so he sits down with me, and one of his things was, you plotting on me? I'm like, no, dude, I just want to help you. And then right after that domino fell, John Wolf got the Milwaukee job. And John said, hey, I want you to come. And I go, I already committed to Jed. So, gee, going from state champion and not losing a game. I could have been with John and not winning one. Um, but no, he brought me into the staff, and I was coaching linebackers and quarterbacks, and Ryan was calling the defense. We get to the first game against Philomath, and I'm in the phones with you and Ryan, and um, we we had pretty good plan offensively against him, and I said, hey, let me know when you want to score because we got about three or four things, and you already knew two of them, so here we go. And um, right before the first game, we're practicing on Thursday, and we had some goal line package issues and some other stuff that Ryan just wasn't sure about. So Thursday night, Ryan called Jed and said, hey, Doug needs to be the DC if we're going to win this thing. And so Jed calls me, and I go, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going from a Thursday night to a Friday. No, Ryan needs to call it for the first game, and then let's the three of us sit down and we'll go from there Saturday. But I'm not Friday morning. We're not. And so, and I think we beat him. Well, let's see, where is he? He's up on the wall, 55-27. Um, so we meet, and then I take over the defense from there, and um, great experience, a lot of fun, a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Really
for
good
sure,
team.
and that definitely was interesting changing defensive coordinators after one game, but it was the right move, and that just kind of shows you the kind of guy that Ryan was a program guy
Absolutely. Yep.
who just said, "Hey, I'm not the one." And we had a senior class who was really really good. That I had a lot of them as freshmen on JV, freshmen and sophomores. Who, when I made the call to you, for those who haven't heard the story, when I made the call, I was like, we got 1 year with these guys too. Like, this is it. We're going to go all in. I'm going to run the offense. You're going to run the defense. You and I talked a lot of shit about we could win a state title at Gladstone if we were running offense and defense. And you ended up running the defense, and we closed the deal. So that was pretty cool. With the 2014 season, and again, this is from my side of it too. I felt a lot of pressure to win because, again, we only had that one season with those kids, and there wasn't a lot trailing. So we
Yeah.
knew we had 20 some seniors, and that's a lot if you're in 6A football.
Sure.
If you're in 4A football, you've been gifted with 20 some seniors. So, and the talent that we had. Did you feel the pressure, or were you having fun with it? Because you described pressure at Milwaukee to get in after not winning. How'd you feel during that season?
See, I didn't think there was much pressure at all. That I thought we were really, really talented. And I thought if our kids listened to us and we could stay healthy enough, we could win it. And so I've been around it long enough to know that um, I didn't want to associate pressure because I didn't want to get uptight. And I also think that, kids, my mom always used to say, kids and animals cut through the bullshit faster than anybody else. If we started to show tension, they would too. So I thought we could win it, and I just thought it was a management thing, that we could see somebody better. I thought Scappoose was the best team we played, and we played them twice. Um, I really didn't feel pressure with it. I thought, you know, worst came to worst, we'd be in the semis, or because you're not even the best teams don't always win championships. So, I thought we could go for a while, but I didn't feel pressure to win it.
So when you get to the championship game, and again, I have my own thoughts and feelings and experiences. We get there, and it's a rough road. It's rougher than we thought it was going to be. We had a lot of injuries. Our playoff games were really really close. All three of our playoff games were close games against some very very good teams.
Sure.
We get to the championship game, and you wake up. Describe that day. How'd you feel waking up and going in? Were you thinking we're getting fitted for rings? Were you thinking, boy, this is going to be really tough? North Bend was a very very good team, a high scoring team in the state. I believe there were 40 some points a game.
Probably 51 a game.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
see, even more so. So, how did you feel going into that contest?
I felt good. I trusted our kids and I trusted our plan. You know, I the watching them on film as much as we watched, and I thought our kids looked great in practice all week. I thought we were focused. I thought we were loose enough to go play. I thought getting out of the semifinal game in overtime was the deep breath reminder that we just kept playing. I thought our coaching staff handled the week really well. Um, the I started the week by showing them the us recovering the fumble in overtime against Junction City when they're running around like 5-year-old kids, just happy as can be. And I go, that's why we're doing this. It's fun, so let's just have fun this week. And I knew there was going to be a challenge because I knew North Bend was really, really good. I didn't know we would hold them to 17 points. But I thought our plan was really, really sound. I thought offensively we could keep away. I didn't think they'd be able to stop us. Um, so it wasn't this arrogance, or it was just, you know what, I need to manage the day really well. I need to manage emotions today. I need to manage situations today. Um, and I need to be as even keel as I can to help our kids be successful. And so it wasn't you know, overly optimistic. It was just all business.
All business. It was a business trip out to
Yep.
Hillsboro. um, all right, so let's talk about that again. You were just back for a year. What was the most memorable? Again, kids you'll always remember, and coaches will always remember. And let's throw this into the mix: parents, staff, community that you'll always remember.
So that was a great experience. Handsome Smith, who was the offensive player of the year for the state, Zach Smith, who was the defensive player of the year. We had Big Sexy, Anderson kid that, great kid. Our um, Sean Williams, our quarterback, that wasn't going to be our quarterback, but our other one got hurt. And Vinny was on that team, and another prom was on that team. Um, a chance to coach with you and Jed was a lot of fun, and coaching with Dan. I think Dan was with us.
Oh yeah, Dan Lee was with us full time. That the previous stint there, he was really just there on game days.
Yeah, that's right.
But he was our running
Um,
backs coach that year.
yeah, and then Lauren Watts, who's always been a friend of the program, and I coached Tanner, his oldest boy, and then Carter, his nephew. And Carter, it was because we had Cooper got hurt, our linebacker that would have been an all-state kid, and Carter took his place. And bless his heart, Carter wound up being the defensive player of the game, and I think the semis or maybe in the finals. But that was a good story. Poor Trask Tellis managed not staying healthy. Daniel Wallace was, a great person and player. Steve Burks was a friend of the program, and his son Sterling. Sterling didn't get any love on the All-State team, but he was one of those kids that I'm not as good as we were. He got us lined up a bunch, and he put us in some good spots.
Sterling was a glue
He,
guy for sure.
yeah, yeah. I would hope he would have got a little more love than he did, but we had the 10-year reunion with those kids this summer, and they came back and watched the practice, and we met them for beverages, and I got to tell Sterling that, and that was good to reconnect with that.
Yeah, and I throw another one in there too, Mike Wu,
Yes.
who his son played for us, Kyle, in my first stint around there, and was definite a guy who talk about a friend of the program that gave everything he could and gave all of his time and fed the kids regularly, and just a great guy. So you're at and let me pull one more thing up here again. A nugget. It might be my favorite picture of all time.
Oh, and the rings. Yep.
Yes, is getting the rings, getting the rings and putting them on was maybe the most satisfying thing ever in doing that. But you talk about I'm feeling pressure, and maybe the pressure for me was A, because I did lobby for you so much. B, I had those kids for all 4 years since they were freshmen, and I really felt that pressure. Um, I know that I wasn't the only one, because on the bus ride home, you've heard the story, but I'll do it for the viewers. Um, Dan Lee and I are on the bus. We always rode the JV bus. Dan and I did. And for some reason, it always broke down. But Dan and I always rode that second bus. And we get in and we're leaving Hillsborough Stadium. And I said, God, I feel like I should be preparing for somebody next week. And he was just like, I'm just glad we didn't fuck it up. Like, he said, I'm relieved more than I am happy. And I said, I really am too. I'm relieved, and I'm happy for the kids and everything. But for myself,
Sure.
like you said, it was a management thing at that point. We just had to put the checkers in the right spot, and then
Sure.
let the kids go ahead and jump over the other ones. So, and I think we did a great job, and you did a great job that year. Um, so you had mentioned previously John Wolf had taken the Milwaukee gig. And so we win the state title. You told him you committed to Jed for the year. Describe the move to Milwaukee after that.
Well, so in Jed really, really, really wanted Ryan to be his defensive coordinator. And so part of my deal of the year that we won was to mentor Ryan to help him get ready to do that job. So, um, it wasn't that, gee, I parasitic, I'm going to take it and run. It was, no, 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 I thought it would be easier for Ryan to do the job without me there, because I filled in for him once before and didn't want kids, this, that, and the other. So, the choice I love Milwaukee, and it was a chance. My ex had retired and left, so that was the only way that Pinder, the principal, was going to let me come back and coach. And Cam was going to coach there too when he was done playing, and Milwaukee was awful. The co-defensive coordinators they had the year before were so resentful of me getting hired and thinking, thought I was stupid and didn't have a plan, and so both of them wound up quitting. Didn't break my heart, but we were awful. So I think the only game we won that first year was the last game of the season. We were over. Sandy was over. Weather was terrible. We're out at Sandy and it's windy and it's raining. And we stopped them on a 4th and goal with about 5 minutes left. And we go 96 yards to score and beat them 20-13, I think. And yeah, we were bad. Drew Walters was coaching with us, came over and helped. Um, but yeah, that was the thing that I remember is just how bad they were. And again, John um, threw me the keys and let me do my stuff. And then eventually, that last year there, Carl and Cam joined on with us, and it was fun.
Yeah, and kind of talk about that, coaching with Cam and Carl, and them, crawling into this universe that you've been a part of, and them getting into coaching for the first time. How was that, their baby voyage into coaching?
They loved it, and it was funky because you always want better for your kids than you have. And I thought, and I love coaching, and it's a huge part of my life, and I've enjoyed it so much. But it's also whooped me more than once. And I thought, okay, do I want them to do this or not? Both of them are naturals. Both of them are better at it than I ever was. Um, they're so good with details. They're so good with kids. They're so passionate about it. And then it really, again, it helps us. It's gone full circle. So some of the conversations that as a parent you don't always have, it's implied stuff. The older we've gotten, and so whether it's coaching the boys or coaching with the boys, we've had opportunities for more of those conversations, which has been really, really cool. Um, One of the funniest things ever in coaching. We're playing Mountain View. We make the playoffs at Milwaukee for the second time in 30 years. Um, we're playing number one ranked Mountain View over there it's 20 degrees. Our water bottles freeze on the sidelines. Um, and we wind up losing the game 3-0. And so our kids' defense, we played our ass off. It was phenomenal. Um, but the Cam and Carl are in the box, and the games are on television over in Eastern Oregon. So the TV crew's box is next to ours, and there's a fourth down in the third quarter, and we've just hit they had the kid that ran for 2,400 yards. He had 7 carries for 19 before he tapped out. We kicked the crap out of him. Anyhow, so it's a fourth down, and I go, hey, I'm going to heat him. We're going to come, and I'm going to send him. And Carl and Cam start screaming stuff like, take out your junk and show them how big it is. Fuck them, let's go. And the TV people stick their heads around, go, and then they see him, and they just started back in again. And the people in the stands could hear him, and they turn around and look at him, and we stop him on the fourth down. And it was, yeah, when they told that story, I was crying because I heard him on the phones, but oh yeah, the TV people, all that was on TV. I'm like, oh, good.
Yeah, those two probably shouldn't be allowed in the box at the same time.
That was so much fun.
So after Milwaukee, you left Milwaukee. You had a couple short stints, and I call this your coaching with friends era.
Uh-huh.
And you went to Grant, and you went to Putnam, and describe those places and the guys that you coached with.
Well, so literally, and that's why after I left Wilsonville and coached with John at Gladstone for a couple of years, that's the way I kind of frame stuff is, I can be a free agent and go coach with my buddies. And so John gets the Grant job and he goes, hey, I want you to be my quality control guy. And I go, what? And he goes, I'm going to have a young staff. I got a lot of stuff going on. Please just come in. If you want a position, great. But I just want you to help coach coaches and help me organize and do a bunch of stuff. And so we're probably 3 weeks into his reign. And he goes, oh, hey, by the way, you're the offensive line coach. And I hadn't coached offensive line for 19 years. But he goes, yeah, you're it. And we're a zone scheme. I go, oh, neat. Um, and so, I did the best that I could. And we got into the playoffs there. We won the PIL and, different coaching there. PIL was the grease fire that I thought it was organizationally. So John and I coached together when we were both assistants. And I love John Beck. He's a great man and a great friend. I told him at the end of the year that if we wanted to stay friends, I couldn't coach for him again. It just wasn't a good fit that way. And, bless his heart, he didn't want, he goes, no, we can work this out. I go, there were enough times where I was ticked off at you and took stuff personally. And I want our friendship's more important than coaching. And, I was going to coach at Putnam before I got the Grant job because I talked you into going to Putnam with me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I called Coach Jacobs and said, "Hey, I'm leaving," he was really upset. And I go, when I went through my divorce, John Beck um, took me and my son down to Southern Oregon. John Beck was at North Medford at the time. We're down there. He says, "Oh, bring Cam down and hang out with me and my wife and for a weekend." Well, he set up a job interview with the athletic director and the principal. And before I left Crater, Oregon, which is where he was living, or Central Point, um, I was offered an assistant track job, an assistant football job, and a teaching job at North Medford because John wanted to help me take care of my kid. And so when John Beck asked me a favor, I said yes. There's no way. And I told Tim that, hey, look, I feel terrible backing out on you, but he did this for me. I can't say no. And so yeah, I did that for a year, and then after that year, I helped him get on his feet and get his program going, and we're still good friends, and that worked out. And then I went back to help Tim and coach with Telly, and again, not a coordinator, just helping out. Um, and it was interesting because it was a different look. I'd never been a Putnam guy before. Um, didn't have a lot of fun coaching there, and but I like and respect Tim, who, by the way, he resigned. He's not the head coach of Putnam anymore. Um, the yeah, just I liked it, and I probably would have stuck around. Cam got the Gladstone job, and I told Tim because I was going to take a bigger role calling the offensive stuff with him. I said, "Hey, look, if Cam gets the job, I'm going to go be his DC." And at first he hemmed and hawed a little bit, but then he goes, "Oh, it makes sense." And so, yeah, I ditched poor Tim. I ditched him twice, but he got over it. We had a real good talk. Like I said, he resigned at Putnam this couple weeks ago, and I called and checked in on him and had a real good conversation. So yeah,
Yeah,
well,
Tim,
did
good
that.
guy.
Yep.
And Beck, who I maintain to this day, best hair I've ever seen from any
Oh,
coach.
without a doubt.
And the guy has like Paul Rudd syndrome or Eddie Murphy. Like he doesn't age.
No.
Um, so John Beck, always good coach and good dude to hang out with. Same with Tim, good dude to hang out with. But so it didn't work out there at Grant and Putnam, but you got to coach with some friends, which is always fun. And I think as we get older, we learn that this game's more about relationships than it is the actual coaching on the field. Um,
Absolutely.
and maintaining those and developing those. So you're back to Gladstone. Cam gets the job. He's, I don't know, 13 years old at this point. It feels like he's a very, very young and inexperienced head coach, but he wants to come back to the program that he, was a part of. It was the best hire at the time, and
Mhm.
you go back to help him. What was it like helping Cam grow as a head coach?
It was funky, and again, he wanted me to take a bigger role than I because I thought he needed to make some mistakes on his own. Um, and there we had a little bit of pushback with that. It was interesting too. I was really proud of him because I thought he did a great job, and some of the situations he had to deal with, I've never had to deal with in 40 years. And as a 28-year-old head coach, he gets, a playoff game that ends with racist slurs and where he late to a football game because there's a jumper on an I-5 bridge and we didn't have a trainer, so people are getting hurt, and he's carrying them off and trying to manage a step. I mean, he did an amazing job. But the interesting part was I was kind of his whipping boy. He wouldn't crap on any coach except for me, and at first it really, really pissed me off. But I thought, you know what? He was part of that getting even deal. And then the other part was is I needed to model for the other coaches how to handle it.
Mhm.
So that he could get to the point where he could crap on somebody other than me. But no, it was really really good. I loved the time together. Um, it was fun to watch him grow into that. The news did a little thing. Like Friday Night Lights did a thing on him, and it was fun to watch him in that role. And the going down to Marist and winning a playoff game his second year was phenomenal. That day, I think it was November 4th. Oh, there they are. Um, he was DK died that morning, and so the weekend before, DK was in the hospital, and we knew that he was going to pass, and he knew he wasn't coming out. And so Cam and I went and spent about an hour and a half with him and talked and laughed and cried a little bit. And that morning that we went to Marist, DK had passed, and so Cam and I and Tyler Hoffman, who played on the state championship team and coaches with us, um, were the only ones on that bus that knew DK. Um, we go down to Marist, and Coach Getzky, who's good football coach, but he's pretty ruthless. they score right off the bat and they run a fake PAT and they don't get it because we played pretty sound. And they go up, it's 20-7 at half. And we come out after halftime and it is a full blown monsoon. I mean, it is raining sideways. The wind's probably 15, 20 miles per hour. They get the kickoff. They're going in to score, fumble. Ethan Finnegan returns it 83 yards for a touchdown. And now all of a sudden it's 23, or excuse me, it's 2014. Um, we keep hanging in. They have 7 yards of offense in the second half because they couldn't throw the ball. And because of the rain, and Cam and I always say, well, that was DK helping us out.
Mhm.
And then we score in the fourth quarter and then hold on and beat them 21-20. We stop them on fourth down twice in the last 5 minutes of the game. And, um, Frank Getzky and I go back a long ways and we've had good and bad moments. But after the game, he was literally speechless, and unfortunately he lost his job after that. But that was sharing that moment with Cam was one of the cool things as a parent to get to do.
Yeah, and you're coaching him again to be a head coach, and Carl was helping you guys out a little bit, so you had both the boys there, and um, so Cam decides, okay, Cam really got into it knowing it was just going to be a more of a short term thing, so he decides, okay, it's time. I'm going to focus on my future. I'm going to start a family, which he has got a beautiful baby boy now, your grandson, who is named after Colton,
Mm-hmm.
which we had mentioned earlier. Um, so he's going to step down. He really, really wants you to take the job. You've interviewed for that job multiple times and you hadn't gotten it. And I remember a hesitation, and you're just like, boy, it's like, I don't know if I can be hurt again. You're just like that battered bride. It's just like, I don't know. I can't be hurt again. So, what really made you want to go after it and be like, okay, I want to take it now?
Well, and part of me, I didn't think I wanted to be a head coach again. Um, that Cam does a pretty good job of talking me into stuff. And so he talked me into coaching track at Gladstone because the program needed somebody. And, um, he pointed out that he thought the kids needed me or needed someone like me and he wanted to stay involved. And um, I thought of the movie Groundhog Day when Bill Murray keeps over and over until he gets it right. And this would be the fourth time that I had interviewed for the job. And the first three times that I interviewed, I made the job completely about football because I thought I was the best coach applying for the job. I thought, you know, better than Wayne Harris, better than John Jedrzejewski. And John's a really good football coach. Wayne, not so much. But um, anyhow, I thought great opportunity, but I learned my Groundhog Day moment from Cam. It was about the community. It wasn't about football anymore. The reason I needed to wanted to apply for this job, I knew we can coach and win football games. I didn't realize how low we were talent wise and number wise. Um, but Gladstone football had always been the hub of that community, and since COVID, it wasn't anymore, and the community was really fragmented and enrollment in school was down and there was just a lot of disconnect, and that's why I thought I needed to take the job because I want to be one that's going to help kind of blend the community again too. So um, that's what I thought about going into it, and they were really the reluctance to hire me in the pool for getting the job wasn't deep. um, the reluctance was I'm old and I bounce around. And so when they were ready to offer me the job, they brought me in for a second time and said, you know, are you going to stay? And one of the things that I did not understand um, with that question, and I get it because I bounced around, was I looked him in the eye, I go, where am I going to go? I go, this is it. I'm not going to go to, UCLA with Chip Kelly. I'm not chasing the West Lynn job. I'm not, I'm going to be the head football coach at Gladstone. Or I'm done. I've done everything else I want to do. I've done it, almost 40 years. And um, I really want to help Gladstone football and help this community. And if I don't get it, I'm done. And they said, well, how long will you stay? And I go, right now, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 10 years. And they go, really? And I go, if I'm doing the job I think I should be doing, absolutely. But I go, I'm not going to leave for another job. So yep, they hired me.
And there you are to this day,
Oh,
and coaching up. And again, you mentioned you've got Cam on staff, or you had Cam, Carl, Neil, Tyler, Vinny. What's it like having all these former players on staff? That's got to be kind
oh,
of a
it's
trip.
so much fun. So much fun. First they get me. Cam and Carl weren't going to coach. My first year as a head coach, we play at Scappoose, um, game one, and uh, after the game, Cam and Carl are down saying, "Hey, we'll be at practice on Monday. What you need help." Um, so it's so much fun. Vinny's grown up a ton. Tyler's grown up a ton. Um, coaching with Cam and Carl's great. Um, we've got a good staff. Butch, our new offensive coordinator, does a great job. Good football mind. Love him and his family. Um, you know, Rob Key, great dude. Got really, like I said, the most important thing you do as a head coach is put good people around kids, and I put really good people around our kids.
Yeah, it seems that way. And you did have a little side gig for a couple years there, coaching women's football. How did you get into that?
Well, because I coached all over the place. When I was at Milwaukee High School as an assistant coach, there was a lady named Holly Petrie whose brother Jarrett played on the football team. Holly was a very good high school athlete. I helped her with the javelin for a little bit. She was an all-state basketball player. She was a co-owner and quarterback for the Portland Fighting Shockwave. So they were looking for a coach a few years back, and she reached out. And I said, you know what? Maybe I'll be a consultant. I don't really want to get into, I'm winding down. And at the time I wasn't coaching track, but they start in the winter. It's a winter and spring league thing. Um, so I said, look, I'll come help. Well, the head coach was a lady named Asia, and nice person, and um, asked a lot of questions, but you could tell she needed some direction and guidance. So first year I was kind of a consultant, and COVID hit. And so we practiced the day that the world shut down, and then we were done. And so the next year came around and they said, hey, we'd like you to coach. I go, well, I'll do the consultant thing. Um, and then they offered me the head coaching job. And I thought, uh, here's the issue. I go, I'll take the job if um, there's involvement from ownership, because the thing that I learned when I was a consultant person was that there was a lot of resentment between players and management, and the players wanted more transparency because they pay to play. They wanted more connection. They wanted to be taken care of better, and I agreed with that completely. So I wind up taking the job, and it's a lot of fun. The skill level wasn't necessarily great, but it wasn't because they were women. It's just because they hadn't been taught. There were some really, really good athletes on this team. One Division I basketball point guard, Division I golfer. She was, believe it or not, the most physical person on the team. Um, but good at college softball players. And the fun part about it is the thing that lured me into it is how badly they wanted to play. You kind of take it for granted. And sometimes coaching boys and coaching high school, as long as you have, people get a little lazy or you have to talk them into stuff. They wanted to play football so passionately. It was great. And so I did it and then coached 2 games before I resigned, undefeated. Um, and Cam was my box guy. That was fun. Cam and Neil were my box guys. And we win our first game. It was fun, but ownership didn't follow through on their promise. And so we go play uh, a Salem team that hadn't lost a game in 4 years. We play them down in Salem. No ownership or management shows up. So we have zero support. Can't get into our locker room. We have issues on the field. We have a player that gets a really severe spinal injury, and we have to have our 13-year-old ball boy track down medical people because there's no adults to support our team. Um, we wind up winning the game 21-14, get a pick in the last minute or so in about the 20, and run out the clock. And I was really excited for the players, worried about the young lady at the hospital. I'm driving home. Bobby went with us. So it was me, Bobby, and Cam and Neil. And it was just me, Bobby, and Cam. Neil didn't come in the second one, and we stopped in Tualatin for dinner, and because the game was at Sherwood, and or no, it was in Salem, and it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. I thought the players had been disrespected by the lack of support, and realized that I didn't feel that they followed through on. So I called the owner the next day and said, "Hey, look, I'm out." Oh, you can't. We're gonna. So during that last game, there was a little mini mutiny from the coaches because there was a player that thought they should be playing more and that it would be more fair if I played them. And I said, I'm here to win a game. So they got pissed by that. We had a player that was doing their own thing. And I told her position coach, hey, pull her. She goes, I'm not going to pull her. She's going to be mean. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. So I just said, I don't need the headache. I did it for free. They give me a stipend, but I donated it back to players so that they had less money to pay to play. So no, it was fun, and I'm glad I did it, but I'm also glad I got out.
Yeah, you got a lot on your plate now with
Yeah.
the high school program and rebuilding the youth program, and you're retired now from teaching, but it seems like your plate's just as full as ever right now.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've got a youth football meeting 3 o'clock this afternoon, so oh yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, the last thing I wanted to talk about, and have you just kind of rack your brain. You mentioned some names during this. You mentioned some guys that Steve Corey, John Beck, guys like that. When you go back and think about it, who are the best coaches that you coached against?
Steve Corey's way up there. I mean, and I was a defensive coordinator at Tualatin when he got the Lake Oswego job, so that's how long ago we went back. I think he's not only a great coach, but he does a great job with his players. I think John Beck is one of the best defensive coaches in the state, period. Um, who I coached against. I know Mike Colson at Lake Ridge was really, really good. Um, and, Tom Smythe was really, really good. Um, boy, did a ton of Ken Potter, a Jesuit, has always done a really good job. Um,
I mean, I'd throw out Greg Lawrence, had great
yeah,
teams
Greg
and great
Lawrence.
staff.
Yep.
Um, you
Um,
know, Scappoose has a great staff.
yeah. Well, and that's like at the 4A level, the coaching's just gotten so much better. Yeah, Coach McNabb at Scappoose is phenomenal. Coach Getzky, I thought, did a great job. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's Coach Nyquist at Staten. When
Mm-hmm.
Cam got his first year as a head coach, he had me help him pick his non-league games, and I picked Astoria, Staten, and Scappoose, and he goes, "Why?" And I
Good
go,
coaches.
"Because really good coaches, they're going to tell us what we don't do well. And so by the time we get to our league, because sometimes we don't always see it, they're going to tell us." So Howard Rube at Astoria and McNabb and Nyquist and yeah. So there's a ton of good ones at the 4A level now, and then over the years there's just been too many to even think about.
And the guys
No,
that you've mentioned were big school guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, not necessarily. I mean, McNabb's been around forever there, and so's
Yeah.
Rue. But you mentioned like the Nyquists, and Mike Fanger went to a smaller school, which Mike Fanger is one of the best offensive minds I've ever been around.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, but yeah, you see a lot of those bigger school guys that are tired of the BS, and they're older guys, so maybe they're a little bit more antiquated. It's time for a younger, newer group of coaches, because coaching in the big schools now is really more about managing kids and parents than it is doing anything football wise. And you see those older guys migrating to these smaller schools. Well, now these smaller schools are being tougher and tougher to beat because they've got some really seasoned guys there.
Oh, sure. Well, and that league that had Marist in it last year, Cascade, the dude from Central's there. Can't remember his name, but he went to Oregon City and now he's there. You got Nyquist, you got good coaches, really good coaches.
Yeah, there are. Um, and then Carl wanted me to ask you this as the last question.
All
And
right.
I told him it wasn't going to be him. He wants to know who the best player you ever coached in high school was. And I said, "Not you,
Boy,
Carl. So why do you really care?" And he laughed. And I threw out a name, and I just want to see what you think.
Carl's up there. Jeremy Asher may be the best that I've ever coached. Luke Staley was, won the Doak Walker Award. He was phenomenal. Um,
Those are the two that came out of my mouth. I said he's going to say Luke Staley because I heard a lot of Luke Staley stories, and I heard a lot of Jeremy Asher stories. And so those were the two that I said that you would say. And I said, "Yeah, Carl, you were great." And I said, "But you didn't win the Doak Walker Award, buddy."
yeah.
But yeah, you've coached definitely some good ones
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
along the way. Well, Coach,
Real quick, the one
yeah,
that gets by Seth Dittman played 14 years of professional football, and he 6'9", 3 something, graduated with an engineering degree, 3.9 engineering degree in Stanford in 3 years. Played 14. He's played in every professional league, and God, what a great kid! Coached his brothers too, but yeah,
and
Seth
where did you
was
coach him?
he was a Tiger.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a Tiger. But I mean, he wasn't the best player, but he may have had the best career. And he's definitely got the best stories.
Yeah.
Because he
Oh,
played in the XFL, he played in the Arena League, he played in Canada, he played in NFL Europe, he got an NFL pension because he was in the league long enough to do. I mean, great. And his two college coaches were Bill Walsh and Denny Green.
they aren't bad.
Oh yeah. So I mean, he's got great stories. But
Well, and,
yeah.
and I'll add on even one more before we close out here. Let's flip it now. Who's the best that you coached against that you just watched on film and you went, "Oh shit, I have to try and
Oh
stop that
wow.
guy."
Um, oh shoot, the kid from Hillsboro that had all Colt Lyerla was a freak. Um,
Yeah, he was. That was a rough outings against him the couple years we played against him.
Thomas Tyner at Aloha was phenomenal. Well, coached against Eric Dungy. Eric Dungy was really damn good too. Um, boy,
I'll share a quick Tyner tidbit. You didn't have to face him twice in 1 year like I did when I was at Lincoln.
oh yeah,
And he ran ruckshot on us. It was, I believe, his sophomore year, like the first game of the season, and that was rough. And then we had to see him in the playoffs, and they said bye bye to us in the playoffs. But yeah, he wasn't bad. He ran for a little bit. I think he still holds the state record for yards in the game with like
I think so
700
too.
or something like
Yeah, he did
that.
against Lake Ridge because I saw the film. Yeah,
Oh yeah, and I believe 10 touchdowns that game, something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Just unreal, like Tecmo Bowl numbers.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, and those guys really, really, you mentioned Andy Darkins too. Just players at Lake Oswego that were, I remember being very good. But
Well, and
yeah,
Isaac Samalo, Cam played against him at Wilsonville. He's still with the Steelers.
That's
Yeah,
right. We did play him when he was at Corvallis.
yep,
Yeah, he wasn't bad either. We had to game plan for that dude.
yeah, yeah. No, they're a
Well,
bunch of good ones.
awesome. And hey, I thank you for joining us and sharing your story and sharing your journey. And I hope and I'm definitely going to put this out to any young coaches need to watch this and understand. Carl said the best thing that happened to him was he had a bunch of D-line coaches in his journey as a
Oh,
D lineman.
absolutely.
And I firmly believe that you making all these stops, you had mentioned, Gladstone saying, well, hey, you're kind of a jump around guy. I look at it the other way and say, boy, you learned a lot from a lot of good people to get to
I've
where
been
you are
really
now.
lucky.
You are lucky. Gladstone's lucky to have you. Thanks for being on the show. And viewers, if you want to like and subscribe, that would be great. We will see you next time on The Aggregate. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, J-Mac.